Welcome to Emtron ECU Training Part 60. In this training tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at working with our traction control feature. Our traction control allows us to take a look, in this case, at our wheel speed sensors, figure out a percentage of slip, and take action, retarding our timing and cutting our spark very specific so that we're maintaining some level of acceleration but avoiding going into wheel spin conditions. It's going to be up to us to program things properly, so we're going to go over all the details for a slip-based traction control setup in this tutorial. Let's jump in so we can check this out. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at working with setting up our traction control within our Emtron ECU. And this tutorial is going to be focusing on wheel speed based traction control, where we can calculate a percentage of slip between the driven and undriven wheel speeds. This will signify if we have slip conditions or loss of traction, or if we're gaining traction as we're accelerating. We want to set this up so that if we start to have an overstep or too high of a percentage of slip, the Emtron can take action. It can start to retard the timing and or cut our fuel or spark in order to reduce the engine's torque output to keep the vehicle accelerating. And we can do this in a very specific manner, as we're going to cover here in this tutorial. The first thing we need to do in order to work with wheel slip base style traction control programming is set up our wheel speed sensors into our Emtron. This is a relatively easy process. We've actually talked about this earlier in the training course in a separate training tutorial. We're going to just jump into that topic right now in the beginning of this tutorial, just so we're able to cover everything from start to finish and keep everything within one tutorial here, focused on the setup of traction control from, again, the beginning to the end. So what we're going to do is jump right now from our tuning window into config. Under config here, we're going to go to channels input setup. And then we're going to move into our speed tab right here under input setup. Now in here we find our various channel names that we need to configure. What I'm going to do here is set up my front and rear wheel speed sensors into my Emtron. Now I have a front wheel drive car here, and I'm only using one wheel speed sensor for the front and one wheel speed sensor for the rear. I don't need any further speed input sources to the Emtron in order to make sure the traction control will work properly and have a proper calculation of slip. We can see we have a variety of different choices here. So we see drive speed front, drive speed rear, there's a left and right, undriven speed front and rear, left and right. In this case, I'm front wheel drive. I have one wheel speed sensor. I'm not going to designate if it's left or right. I'm just going to designate it as drive speed and ground speed. We do have this other option here, vehicle speed. Vehicle speed is used if you're sending in a transmission sensor input to the Emtron. So that's what you would set up here for the vehicle speed, but in this case I'm using wheel speed sensors. Now I am using the ABS sensor, which is a 2-wire sensor, coming from my Honda Civic here. I'm using a 2-wire sensor, and those are a magnetic style sensor. Now the magnetic outputs, or the VR style outputs, sometimes can give problems in terms of sending a signal into a standalone system, regardless if it's Emtron or other kinds of standalone systems. I like to run a analog to digital converter so that what I'm sending into the Emtron is a digital signal or a Hall effect square wave style signal. Instead of sending in a sine wave based, amplitude based style signal with a VR sensor, which can start to create problems, we want to be more specific with this, and we send in a cleaner signal. So I'm actually running an analog to digital processor. It's made by Motec. It's called the DMCD, which is the part number that you can purchase for about $120, $130. You'll wire in your positive and negative wire from your wheel speed sensors. There's two inputs to the actual Motec DMCD. And then the output, that's going to be the front wheel speed and the rear wheel speed processed through that analog to digital signal converter. And what it's sending is then the Hall effect square wave style pulses back into the Emtron. So that's what I have set up here on my particular vehicle. The drive speed in this case of being a front wheel drive car is going to be coming from my front wheels. So we want to make sure that you're designating when you're wiring which wheel speed sensor is going into which input here to the Emtron. So my front wheel speed sensor is going into my drive speed here. And then the input source, I've set this as a digital input because in this case, I'm using a Hall effect style signal. So I'm going to go in here and just choose my digital inputs. Now in this case, I've used digital input 11 as my front wheel speed sensor input source. So I'm going to go and correct that here, select that here into the input selection. Now under the input settings here, it is a Hall effect style input. The activation here could either be rising or falling. I'm going to choose falling because on a square wave Hall effect style signal, that seems to be a more reliable option in terms of the triggering, so it counts that as a pulse for the input. Now in this case, I'm going to have my pull up on. The filter here, I'm going to leave at 0 because I can filter this in another area. Now the scaler is something that I have to consider here. The scaler, as I'm looking at this right now, let's jump in here to my spreadsheet. Now this is the Excel spreadsheet provided for the course. We're finding up top, you can see that's the Emtron course worksheet. You can download right from the course library. What we're going to find here is we have to put into this particular calculator under wheel speed the number of teeth that are going to be found on my actual pickup for the ABS sensor. Now in my particular car here, I have 32 total teeth. The wheel diameter is going to be the total diameter of the wheel and the tire together. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.